Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to welcome our next speaker, actress, writer, and producer, Miss Teri Hatcher, who was kind enough before we walked into this event to assure me my dress had just enough orange to count. Miss Hatcher, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Your Excellency, Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellency, Mrs. Lana Nasupe, Permanent Representative of the United Arab Emirates to the United Nations, Madam Pumzile Mlambo Nuka, Undersecretary General and Executive Director of the UN, distinguished delegates, distinguished panelists, dear guests. My name is Teri Hatcher. I am honored to be here today to recognize the International Day to End Violence Against Women, followed by the 16 days of activism against gender violence, and of course, the Orange Your Neighborhood campaign. The color orange is bright and optimistic and symbolizes a hope for a better future and a world without the continued human rights violations against women and girls. The status of violence against women continues to be calamitous. 120 million girls have experienced forced sexual acts, and it was estimated in 2012 that half of all women killed were killed at the hand of an intimate partner or family member. My story sheds light on another grim statistic. This is a story about the dangers of silence. I really said I wasn't going to cry. It's an emotional day. When I was 7 years old, I was sexually abused by my uncle. I was convinced it was my fault, and I blamed myself for what had happened, so I didn't tell anyone, and I was silent. I did, however, unsurprisingly, start to act out, and my mother decided to keep me away from my uncle. I didn't see him anymore, but no one in my family ever asked exactly what happened. We remained silent. Finally, when I was 18, I was still too ashamed to actually say the words out loud, so I wrote them down in a journal, and I gave the journal for my mother to read. And she told me that both my mother and father had suspected something had happened, but they were just burdened by their own confusing anger and helplessness, that they were paralyzed into their own silence. And so we remained silent. I was silent, my family was silent, and my uncle was free to live his life and not be held accountable. So jump forward a few years to me in my 30s. I was helping my parents pack up my childhood home, and I came across a current newspaper article about a beautiful 11-year-old girl named Sarah from my hometown. The story recounted how she had wrapped her head in a towel in order to avoid making a mess and shot herself in the head. Her reason? In a suicide note, she implicated my uncle, who had been sexually abusing her for years. I was shocked and devastated and overwhelmed by the idea that he had continued his abuse, and that now, even as he was probably well into his 60s, had caused the pain in this young girl that had resulted in her death. How could this have happened, I thought. I reached out to the DA in the case, anonymously at first, still maintaining my silence. And it was important to me to make sure that this time he was going to be accountable. He was going to go to jail. But as it turned out, the DA told me that the case was anything but ironclad. The only evidence they had against him was her letter. And of course, she wasn't able to testify because she was dead. So he wanted me to give a deposition of my story. My case was long past the statute of limitations, so I was not able to prosecute. But he could use my deposition to establish a pattern and credibility. So I did. I told my story. I broke my silence. And my deposition was read in court, and my uncle took a plea deal, and he went to prison, and he died there. He was convicted and sentenced, but nothing could undo the devastating violence he left in his wake. I survived this abuse, and I helped Sarah's family to feel a small sense of victory and some closure, but that doesn't make me a hero, and it doesn't make me define myself as a victim. It only makes me one of three. I am simply one of three women who is forced to accept violence as a part of their life story. I am one of three women who for the rest of her life battles the voice in her head that accepts blame for abuse, a voice that is antithetical to self-esteem, self-worth, and happiness. This is a statistic that has to change. 1 in 3 women can no longer have to face a stigma and a fear that prevent them from seeking help. 1 in 3 women should not feel afraid to come forward and report it, as they so often do, because they think they will not be believed or taken seriously. When society shames the victim by asking, "Why did you stay?" or "Why didn't you say something?" instead of asking, "Why did he abuse her?" we just continue to foster a society where the abuser continues to abuse. That 1 in 3 woman could be your mother, your daughter, or your sister. It is unacceptable to not actively and passionately work to change a society in which any woman is violated, injured, tortured, and killed. Everyone everywhere has a responsibility to end violence. I am 1 in 3, and I will be the one who yells from the rooftops until those numbers change. Until every woman who has faced abuse feels less alone and safe enough to find the courage to have her own voice. Until violence against women is no longer a part of any woman's story, silence will not be a part of mine. Thank you.